All right, well, welcome folks. Welcome to the Scrum Master Power Hour. Thank you for those wonderful introductions. My name is Patty. I will introduce myself in just a little bit, but we are here today to talk about our favorite subject, being the Scrum Police, and how to avoid being the Scrum Police. So I'm going to share some slides. We're going to do a little bit of a slide deck presentation. We'll go into breakout rooms, and then we'll come back and I will finish my presentation, my slides, my webinar, what have you. So let me share my screen, and hopefully you can all see it. Give me a thumbs up if you can. Super. Okay. All right, let me start my slideshow. Okay, well, today's topic is how to stop being the Scrum Police, a trap that many of us fall into, and start being an influencer. All right, so who am I? Well, you probably know me because you showed up here, right? My name is Patty. You probably have been following me on LinkedIn. Maybe we've interacted in various ways, but I am the founder of Agile Mindset Consulting. I focus on Scrum Masters. So Scrum Master career coaching, something that Art mentioned earlier, Scrum Master group training, and my signature program is called the Scrum Simulator. And I also go into companies and help them with their Agile transformation, from workshops all the way through coaching and consulting. So I started this Power Hour about, I can't even believe this, but about a year and a half ago in the middle of last year, because I saw a need in Scrum Master development. Not only the basics, right? What are the Scrum events and what's a user story, like those basic fundamental things, but let's get together and talk about the hard stuff, the stuff that we face every day, the things that we don't really get training in our Scrum Master certifications, or some of the things that we're afraid to talk about in our company because we kind of don't want people to know we're struggling. So today is going to be one of my favorite topics, the Scrum Police. And this is something that I talk about a lot. I ran this workshop earlier in the year. People really are struggling with this role, and it's very easy to fall into the Scrum Police trap. So here's our backlog for tonight. We are kind of in the welcome and introduction phase right now. I'm going to put up a few slides here, give you a little bit of a concept introduction. You'll go into small breakout rooms so you get to meet one another, talk about your common experiences, and help each other in getting over this impediment. We'll come back, we'll do a group share from 5 to 10 minutes, and then I will finish up my slides with some tips and tricks on things that I have found that have helped me get over this impediment. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. And like I mentioned, we will be recording this. We are recording this. I will send this out to everybody on Monday, including those folks that signed up and are unable to attend, but you will be able to watch this back and have it for posterity on YouTube. So let's get to our slides. All right, so some of you may be very familiar with this drawing. This was something created a number of years ago by Barry Overeem, who is a very well-respected thought leader on LinkedIn and in the Scrum community. This cartoon goes hand in hand with the, at the time of this drawing, 8 stances of a Scrum Master, but now he's narrowed it down to 6. This is kind of like the alter egos, the traps that we fall into as Scrum Masters, because our company doesn't understand our role, our team doesn't understand our role, we don't understand our role, and we fall into these typical behaviors because we don't know what we quote unquote should be doing. Today, we're going to focus on the Scrum Police, but you might recognize some of these other, I guess, South Park-esque cartoons, roles that the Scrum Master falls into that once they're there, they are really struggling to get out of it. So the challenge with this, falling into that Scrum Police role, is you probably know, and you've also heard this, you can't force the Scrum framework on people. Nobody wants to be forced to do something or change. You can't lecture your way out of this situation. I still consider myself a teacher, but I'm a trained teacher by trade. I was a former public school educator, and I'm very comfortable standing up in front of people and yakking at them, but sometimes it just goes in one ear and out the other. And also, you can't project manage your way out of this. You can't micromanage people, monitor their JIRA task movements and think they're going to appreciate that because they don't understand the why. Now, the challenge is definitely harder if you're in a remote or hybrid environment, which you probably all know. But this puts you as a Scrum Master in a very catch-22 situation, because although you can't force these things on people, you can't make them change, you're kind of hired to do that. So the big question mark is, how do you get people to understand that it's in their best interest to make progress and move towards an alternate way of working? Because the way they've always done it, which may be comfortable, is clearly not working. So it's your job to coach them and influence them, not force them. So I'm going to put you folks into breakout rooms for 10 minutes. And here's a little meme that I made. I love the minions, but I mean, this kind of speaks volumes, right? You can't force people to move their tasks in JIRA, but you know the benefits of having that visibility into the work. They just have to see it themselves. So in your breakout rooms, I want you to have a conversation with your 2, 3, 4 other people. What is the Scrum Police? Why do we fall into this trap? And yes, it is a trap that's hard to get out of. And what is your experience trying to get out of that? How difficult or easy has it been for you? So I'm going to stop sharing my screen at the moment. I'm going to ask, are there any questions before we move into our virtual rooms? All right, welcome back, everybody. That felt really quick. I don't know about you. All right. Well, we're going to take about 10 minutes to kind of share with the group what went on in the breakout room. So what did you take away? What did your group discuss? Who would like to start?
We did discuss the impediment of the Scrum Police and ways to get around that when facing some developers or teams that can be a bit more difficult to collaborate with. So that's mostly what we discussed.
Chun, did you have any specific tip that your group might want to share with the larger audience here?
There was one, there's a tip is, for example, when someone is reluctant to use some practices that are part of the framework, whether it's Scrum or anything else, but it's a good practice. Instead of trying to push the practice on the person, we can just practice it ourselves and then just highlight the positive outcomes of that practice. So the person will see it by themselves.
Yeah, and going off of what she said, I know also Tiffany had a good point, setting one-on-ones early, especially when you come into as a Scrum Master. I think coming in, setting up one-on-ones early in terms, instead of doing it midway, because you can build a rapport early and you can build that connection versus if you want to schedule one-on-ones and they feel like you're a Scrum Police, it'll feel like, oh, it's kind of forceful and he's just like, setting up one-on-ones to micromanage me. So I think that's really important. Obviously, like certain devs sometimes may feel like agile may be useless. I even have like a situation where, a dev felt like, I don't have to update my hours of certain tasks and stuff like that. But when you have one person doing it, then it can lead the way for other devs or QAs to do the same thing. So just being able to have them understand that it's important to be very like responsible and also on the same page with the team. So yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you go in there and start with the one-on-ones in the beginning, they get to know you and see that you're not there to force anything on them, because your reputation precedes you. Not you personally, but as a Scrum Master or as an Agile coach. The reputation's out there, but I like what you said there, Iffy, because if you try to do it late in the game, they'll think something's up. Like they're in
Right.
trouble, right? Like they're going to the principal's office or something. So I like that. I'm a huge fan. Thank you guys for sharing that. Let's move on to the next group, whichever number group that is. Who would like to go?
What did our group talk about? I think we talked a little bit about what kind of people we follow. We talked about, you know, if they're going to follow somebody, it's not going to be somebody who's coming down on you. You have to actually have some relationship with them. So yeah, I think they already hit on that. As far as, I wish our companies would have that month time, give you a little grace to watch the team, get to know them a little bit, have those one-on-ones. And how do we get out of that? Should we kind of go through that? How do we get out of being the police? I think we talked about leading by example. Probably best to never be in that position. So then don't, you know, our group, if you remember, we kind of talked about. Mohammed, you got anything?
Yeah, I'm here. So,
I appreciate that.
okay, we talked. Hello, everyone. Okay, we talked about how to overcome the police master. So we give example for how to lead by example. For example, how to always get back to the team, or how to get them, make them responsible, or having the ownership, or for the task, or the thing they are doing. And we talk about the team have to know the value, or the value behind every event, everything we're doing, so they can understand everything, or they have the ownership and they can be responsible, or they know how to why we're doing this, why we're doing Scrum, why we're doing the daily stand-ups, and so on. I think that's it. That is.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that point that you make. If we don't know the value, how can we communicate it? Kind of like our own value, right? As a Scrum Master, if we don't understand our value and what we bring to the table, it becomes very difficult to communicate that. And a lot of times companies don't understand the value, right? So it's our job to educate them and coach them in that, which means we have to have a lot of courage. We have to go first. We have to lead by example, and that is not easy. You will feel super uncomfortable. It's not ever easy, but it gets easier. Let's say that. And sometimes you get to the point where, like, you know what? I've gotten to the point where I just go in and say whatever I need to say, but I don't do it in like a very commanding and controlling way. I'm very approachable and friendly. And I've had to develop that personality because it's kind of like I feel like I've turned into an extrovert because of that. I have been a lifelong introvert, and I still think I'm an introvert, but I have crossed the chasm because this role has brought it out in me. So thank you for bringing that up. It is uncomfortable for an introvert to do this type of stuff, but one-on-ones are where your strength is. So that's where you start. All right, let's go to another group. So a third group.
So we talked about two things. One, well, a few things. So the first thing we talked about was how the Scrum Master kind of advocates for the team with management. And then that kind of keeps them from turning into the Scrum Police, right? As long as you kind of maintain your posture as advocate for the team and not, pleasing management, you're good. Michael brought up a really good point that it depends really on the maturity of the team as far as like how well they are at doing things on their own and how much coaching they need. So, and then another aspect we brought up was the level of psychological safety within a team. So, and how that can, being the Scrum Police can really just kind of wreck that. And it's really important to build that first before doing anything.
That's one of your number one jobs as a Scrum Master or Agile coach or Agile professional, whatever role it is that you're stepping into. That is your like highest priority, because there's not a lot of psychological safety at most companies. I don't know if anybody's noticed that.
I have a question for Adam, if I may.
Sure.
I've done some training as a life coach and things like that, and kind of the methods that I think about when I hear word coaching is it's more didactic. Where are your pain points? How can we help solve them? So, and I think alternatively, there's also a big reliance on coaching as more kind of teaching or mentoring. So I think that's, to me, that's a big distinction, because if you can have somebody become introspective and identify their pain points with what you're trying to have them do, then it makes the change more profound and it allows them to choose the change. And I think that takes away the Scrum Police aspect of things.
Yes, I would agree with that. I mean, in coaching, it's you show them, okay, this is one way of looking at it, and yeah, the team has to make that choice. Yeah, or else you're going to be the Scrum Police. So, yep, no, I'd absolutely agree. It's got to be a choice the team makes on their own, but I think it's a good idea for the Scrum Master to at least show them the way. Give them the option.
Yeah. People are more likely to do something if they come up with the idea themselves.
Oh, absolutely. And then, and it's all about empiricism, right? If they come up with something that doesn't work, then on the next review, we talk about it and then figure out something else.
Yes. Yes. So quick question. You said, Michael, were you folks in the same group?
Yeah, it was myself, Tolu, Anu, and Michael.
Okay. I've been like messaging the two of you and Michael. I'm like, you guys have got to meet. So I'm glad you did. And now you can, of course, take it offline. But yeah, you guys are in very similar situations, transitioning military. So I'm sure you've got a lot to talk about. Adam's
Absolutely.
awesome. So he knows his stuff, Michael.
Thank you.
All right. So that was a third team. So let's go with, I don't know. Again, I don't know what numbers we're on or what numbers you all were, but team number A, fourth team. Who wants to go?
Yes, I'll go. And this is the first group. And we talked about majorly what Hart kind of touched base on briefly earlier. And I think you did mention it about teams being a mirror to themselves versus you telling them, identifying the problem for them and pushing them through the solution and all of those good stuff. And I shared one of my experiences with my group when we're talking about how I facilitated that using this particular wonderful tools called Team Retro, because it was very useful at a time with my team when team members would not we had a issue with the product owner telling teams what to do. You know, as a kind of product owner wearing the multiple hats, he knows the product as well as the team does, and as a result, he wouldn't let team have the space they need to hone their product in the process towards delivering their craft. So I shared with us how I shared with my group how we were able to use a team retro, the anonymous retro to get out of that, angle. It was, and at the end of the day, I was left with little but no. I was left with little but no coaching efforts to do, because he could see it in real time by himself that these approaches, one of the things standing in the way of the team from being, productive as needed. So this technique is very useful, and all in all, one-on-one psychological safety. And I feel we need to also have one thing in mind here. Team situation standpoint needs to be versus organizations standpoint we need to put that into cognizance when we're trying to provide solutions to issue, because it's not one size should fit all. Like, we need to be able to diagnose these issues, look at where it stems from, look at who are the players involved, and how do we get these people to give us the required support we need to influence the required change to meet expectation from time to time. So that was just what we talked about, touch base on the micro.
Let's hear from our last group.
I think I was part of the last group with Felicia. And we really didn't talk about anything that anyone else has not talked about. We talked about giving teams the enough, rope to be able to do their own thing and understand letting go. So that's what we sort of generally talked about rather than forcing them. So
yeah, and I love that term you just used, because I'm an avid yoga practitioner, and they always talk about letting go. You have to let go of control, and you have to let them make their own choices. And even if it's going to be like driving straight into a wall, the important point is to have a conversation about it afterwards and have them kind of talk about what happened and come up with an action item to do something differently next time, right? Because the idea is people typically, and this is human nature, get into this behavior pattern of doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. And they call that insanity, because that's what it makes you, right? Crazy. And you have to help the teams break out of those patterns. But it is holding up the mirror and showing them, like, have you taken a look at what's going on here, folks? What do you think of that? Is that working for you? All right, well, thank you, Andrew. Thank you, everybody, for having such great discussion and being willing to come into this large group. Some of you are strangers, you've never been here before, right? And just being willing to put yourself out there and speak in front of this group. I'm going to go back to my slides. We'll see if you folks covered the things that are on my slides. Hopefully I can put some new ideas in your space and maybe put a twist on some of these things. So let me share my screen and we will get back to that. All right, so this is where we left off. All right, so a lot of the things that people are dancing around are these concepts of soft skills. So how to influence is using your soft skills. And as I always talk about, I'm a former public school teacher. This stuff is not taught in schools. It's focused on hard skills, knowledge, memorizing things for tests, spitting it back out, right? The command and control environment, we're trained and rewarded for that. So it's natural that we struggle with this as we step into our adult roles, especially as Agile and Scrum require these things. So we have to push ourselves out of our comfort zone in order to retrain ourselves to model the behavior for others, right? Because if we don't go first, they sure as heck aren't, right? So I've come up with kind of like a flow diagram. And I think we talked a lot about these things within our discussion already. And I'm going to have a slide of each one of these in a little bit more depth, but building personal relationships is the first like key to this whole soft skill development process for you. And with that is understanding your own emotional intelligence and developing that. So are you self-aware? Do you know what you're putting out there? And do you understand why you're getting the responses back that you are? So playing with that a little bit, and going beyond that and working on your social skills. One of the things as a Scrum Master that I really, and again, this is like, lifelong introvert. I only want to talk to one person. I only want to talk to the people that I jive with. And I've had to learn how to talk to everybody in their own language because everybody's different. I'm going to get into the next one a little bit with my slide, but I'm a scientist by nature. So you might recognize delta, that means change. And a small d, if you remember physics at all, is distance. So understanding how far you've come and how far your team has come. And then effectively sharing your story. And this is where vulnerability comes into play. And you have to go first, because if you don't share your story and show vulnerability, again, the rest of the people in front of you sure as heck won't. So let's dig in a little bit to each one. Okay, so building personal relationships. I think we got this one down, but build trust and psychological safety. If you haven't read The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, pick it up this weekend and read it. It will change your life. It will help you understand what's going on in front of you when you're watching these teams interact. But it talks about trust being the foundation. That is it. That is the key. Everything else can't happen without that. And you need to understand someone's why in order to effect change. A leader's why is not the same as a developer's why, is not the same as the agile coach's why. Everybody has a different reason. So getting to know people on a human level, understanding what makes them tick, you can understand what's going on in their head so you know their reason for wanting to change. Emotional intelligence. I think my reveals are a little out of order here. So whoops. Okay, so putting yourself in somebody else's shoes to have empathy for their situation. When you get a reaction or a response, including a negative one, taking a step back, taking a deep breath and saying, what's going on in that person's head that made them react that way? What's going on in their life that made them react that way? Don't take it personally. Try to understand them so you can coach them from that place. Consider things such as, what did someone say to me to help me take that same tough step? So you've been through some stuff. Put yourself in the other person's shoes and said, what helped me get through that? And I can then maybe try the same with them. And then also, do you know the difference between mentoring or coaching? Sometimes people want to be mentored. They want to kind of be told the answers, so to speak. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they push back and they get defensive and they really don't want you to tell them what to do. So you may just need to ask them powerful questions. The other flip side of that is sometimes people don't want to make decisions. They just want to be told what to do. Those are the people that need coaching the most. You have to coach them to get them to make their own choices. And that's an uncomfortable position sometimes. So looking at what's going on and making that right choice for the person in front of you will help you get better results. All right, so here's my scientific method here. Let me make sure again, sorry about my reveals, not in the correct order. So if you remember physics, delta D means change in distance. So constantly direct the team to look backwards and see how far they've come. And this can be in a retrospective, right? This is a formal event to do that. But talk to them in the one-on-ones. Hey, do you remember where you were a couple of months ago? Look at how far you've come. Talk to me about that. Get them to verbalize that they are making positive changes, and they will be more likely to continue to want to make positive changes. Because sometimes when we're caught up in stress and frustration, we do not look back and see how far we've come. So it's up to you as a Scrum Master to help people do that sometimes. So revisit your previous retros. Look at retro number 1 with your brand new team compared to retro number 6, which is where you are now, and say, look at these two things side by side. Look at how far you've come, and get them to verbalize what role Scrum and Agile has played in that growth. Because again, there are easy wins with implementing Scrum and Agile, but eventually we get to something really difficult. And that's where you need to coach them through that obstacle, but remind them that Agile and Scrum, look, it's working for you. Let's keep going. And then finally, ask them powerful questions and get them to say these things out loud. Get them to verbalize it, to hear themselves saying it. Yes, we're doing well. Yes, our communication is better. Yes, we don't have all these darn emails flying back and forth, code switching all the time. Yes, the fire hose of work has been shut off, all because we can say, what's the priority here? And be confident in doing that. And then the final piece of this is to share your story. And as an introvert, this was very scary for me to start doing this. I had to be vulnerable. I had to be willing to stand up and tell people things, people that were strangers, people that I had no idea how they were going to respond to it. And I had to do it anyway, because then they see that I've overcome something, and it is possible to overcome great obstacles. And then maybe that will give them the impetus to try it as well. Discuss challenges you've seen on other teams and speak how they've gotten through those challenges. You want to be careful that you're not comparing teams to each other. So that's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm kind of talking about here is, if I'm a contractor, for example, and I have experiences at one company and I help the team overcome an obstacle, I move to another company, right? Disguise the information. But I talk about like, hey, I know you feel like you're the only one here, but let me talk to you about what happened on my other team in my previous company last year. And then they get the sense of, oh, it is possible to implement Agile. It is possible to implement Scrum. We can do this. We don't have to do things the way they've always been done. So that encourages people. And the final piece is, be a teacher. Use these as teaching moments. Teach them through your stories that Scrum can work. And it doesn't have to be formal, like presentation, slide deck workshops. I am talking about in your daily Scrum, tell stories. In your retro, tell stories. Whatever it might be. Find those moments where you can share something, not having any expectations of the response. They may say nothing. They may sit there in silence. You got to be comfortable with that. But I promise you, the next time you share a story, somebody will say something, or somebody will bring it up in the one-on-one. They are listening. I promise you. It is powerful stuff. And the final thing, right, because this is what we're here for, right? The resistance to the Scrum events. We don't want any more meetings. We already have enough meetings. We don't want to force anybody to come to these new meetings, right? The intention is not to put more stuff on people's calendars. It's to help them through these 4 steps realize they need to get rid of the stuff that's not working and add the things that are designed to improve their work process. Bottom line. So, Q&A time. What kind of came up? What of this, interests you? What further questions might you have? Let me stop my sharing and let's discuss.
I think a lot of people consider what you say soft skills as soft skills, I think, but they're more essential skills. And it's not just in this milieu. It's not just as a Scrum Master. It's in any job, and when you're forming a team. But I might change those to essential skills, not soft skills.
It's almost like they need to be rebranded, especially as something more valuable and important that anybody gives them credit for. Yes, I love that. Essential skills. But again, it goes back to, we're not taught this stuff in school because this is not deemed important. But the work of today and the work of the future is resting on this stuff. So they are essential. Absolutely. Power skills. Adam, is that like something you're seeing coming up?
Yeah, that's actually a term that I've heard in reference to soft skills. They're actually, I started hearing it last year. They're starting to rebrand them now as power skills because people are realizing just how essential they are.
Excellent. I have never heard that term. See, I learn stuff from everybody.
It's being more and more used even with the PMI and HR publications.
Got it. Good to know. So when's the Scrum community going to start talking about that?
Soon.
Let's start the conversation, right?
I was going to say tonight.
Exactly.
Yes, there are indeed power skills. Because if we think about it deeply, we'll find that the required resources that we need to collaboratively engage with one another, manage expectation from different layers of organization structures lies in the soft power skills, And I won't be surprised if the next Scrum guide coming up would, incorporate this lingo in their structure, and it's power skills as well. Come to think of it as a servant leader. Your power lies in how you serve how you serve your people, how you lead them to success from time to time. Because if they're failing, you're failing. So it's indeed a power skill. Power skills. Yeah.
How about some folks that we haven't heard from? I know some folks kind of join late and you're like, what's going on here? Anybody else? All right. Well, if we feel satisfied and we want to kind of just take the learnings, meditate on it, think about it, we can certainly close our meeting. Like I said, we will, I will clean up the recording a bit. I kind of delete out all of the empty space to condense it, and I send it out on Mondays. So everybody will have this in their email box Monday morning so they can watch it again next week. Any closing thoughts before we sign off? Yes, you're welcome. You're welcome. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for showing up, having dialogue with other Scrum Masters, aspiring Scrum Masters, people that are, wanting to learn more about Scrum in general. I always appreciate this time on, every other Tuesday. So thank you for showing up. In 2 weeks, we will be having another fireside chat. The sign up will be up next week, but just a little sneak peek. I often tell stories about, the impetus for me starting this meetup was when I first became a Scrum Master officially in 2018, I was overwhelmed. I started going to the in-person meetups, right, because that's what was going on at the time. And I just felt overwhelmed by imposter syndrome. I felt overwhelmed by, there were just a lot of people that were really far on their journey. And I felt like I needed more foundational conversations. And that was my intention for starting this meetup, to remove as much as possible the intimidation of showing up at a meetup and learning from other people. So to make a long story short, one of these first meetups that I showed up at, I'm inviting the person that runs this meetup. And we're going to talk about like my first experience and the awkwardness of it all. So I'm excited to bring her in and we can chat about that, and I can share that wonderful story with you all. So, like I was there too. It was tough, but I kept showing up, and that's the important part. Don't let one overwhelming time discourage you. Keep showing up to this, because this is where you make the relationships, and this is where you gain the knowledge and connections to get further in your career, bar none. So, all right, folks. Well, I am going to send you off into your dinner, or if it's later or earlier for you, send you off into some other point in your day, and I will see you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.